welcome to the debate. Imagine you're stranded in the wilderness, right? And you absolutely need to start a fire. You really have two choices here. You can meticulously gather dried tinder, strike a flint, and, gently blow on the embers until you have this controlled, sustainable flame.
Or you can just stand in an open field holding a metal rod in a thunderstorm, right? Just waiting for lightning to strike.
Exactly. Just hoping for a miracle. And today we're really deconstructing the vague, often, overly glamorous success stories of online creators. We're specifically focusing on this highly revealing interview between systems architect Arturo F. Munoz and product expert Lenny Rachitsky.
Yeah, it's a fascinating discussion.
It really is, because we are looking at the unglamorous, tactical truths behind building a profitable audience from absolute zero today.
And the core question we're unpacking here is this fascinating tension in modern business building. Basically, is achieving success today primarily about finding what we call escape velocity through algorithmic platform advantages?
Right, getting struck by the lightning of social media algorithms.
Exactly. Or is it fundamentally about a reverse order process? Where you do the hard manual outreach to verify a tiny mini tribe's actual willingness to pay before you ever create a single piece of public content.
Well, I represent the position that true, defensible business viability comes entirely from that reverse order. I mean, you have to manually verify that people are willing to pay for your insights with a small core group first.
And I take the position that while manual validation is a fantastic, honestly non-negotiable starting point, a creator still absolutely requires algorithmic distribution. You need platform leverage to achieve true escape velocity. You just can't scale a sustainable media business purely on handshakes and direct messages.
I disagree, but to really get into this, we have to start with the brilliance of Arturo Munoz's interview approach, because he successfully stripped away this very hand-wavy advice that Lenny Rachitsky initially tried to offer.
Oh, totally. The classic PR version of the story.
Right. If you spent any time online, you've heard this narrative. Lenny's original story was essentially, I just did good work consistently, and the audience organically followed.
Right, build it and they will come.
Yeah, which is it's a myth. Munoz pressed him and he uncovered a massive contradiction. Lenny's initial success was heavily driven by his early arrival to the Substack platform in 2019. Back then, because Substack was trying to grow its own user base, the platform was giving away subscribers like free candy.
They had that brand new recommendation feature, yeah.
Exactly. And the reality is platform algorithms are designed to sell ads and benefit the platform's bottom line. They are not public utilities built to help creators. Because of that, the only reliable path today is Munoz's reverse order.
Wait, so you're saying just abandon the algorithms entirely?
Yes, a creator has to start with unglamorous manual labor. I'm talking about sending direct messages on platforms like LinkedIn to find a small mini tribe. You verify they have a problem worth paying to solve before you build the rest of the audience.
Look, I actually completely acknowledge the brilliance of Munoz's pushback in that interview. It was an absolute masterclass in getting past the fluff. Getting Lenny to admit the role of timing was huge. But hold on, we have to look at the sheer math of the situation here.
Okay, let's look at the math.
Manual outreach is fundamentally unscalable. Lenny's honesty about his early adopter advantage actually proves exactly how vital platform leverage is to a modern business. You cannot build a massive, six-figure operation simply by sending direct messages one by one.
But he didn't build it with an algorithm. He built it with a timing loophole that doesn't exist anymore.
But even today, a creator must eventually harness some algorithmic growth engine. The manual work lights the match. Absolutely, it proves your idea isn't terrible. But the algorithms act as a massive matchmaking engine to find the thousands of other people who look exactly like your first few early adopters.
Well, let's break down how that matchmaking engine actually functioned for Lenny, though. Because this is where Munoz forced him to admit the reality of platform timing. Lenny initially claimed his audience grew just because he shared actionable frameworks from his time at Airbnb.
Which he did.
He did, but he thought he was just sharing knowledge about, conversion funnels and supply growth that was obvious to him but wasn't to others. But Munoz pointed out the actual mechanics of play. Substack's recommendation feature inherently favors what we call incumbent scale.
Meaning the rich get richer.
Precisely. Let's explain the mechanism of how that actually works for a second. When a massive newsletter with 100,000 subscribers recommends your smaller newsletter, every single time a new person subscribes to them, a pop-up automatically prompts that person to subscribe to you.
Right, it's a passive growth loop.
Yeah, you are passively riding the momentum of their marketing budget and their scale. Lenny had to confess that his 2019 timing, getting there before the platform was saturated with a million other writers, provided his actual escape velocity. He didn't engineer the 9,000 newsletters that ended up recommending him. The Substack product team engineered the software feature that made it happen.
But doesn't that ignore the core variable in the equation here? Yes, the Substack product team built a feature that rewarded early users. It created a goodwill loop. But Lenny still had to write highly specific, useful material every single week.
I'm not saying he didn't write good stuff.
But the platform timing was just a tailwind, right? It only amplified work that was already excellent. I mean, without those actionable Airbnb insights, without the clarity he brought to problems product managers were actively facing, the algorithm would have amplified a blank page. If your writing is bad, a pop-up recommendation doesn't force anyone to click subscribe.
Sure, but the danger here is believing that good work is enough today, now that those early platform windows have firmly closed. Lenny himself admitted in the interview that if you were starting at zero today, he wouldn't bet on Substack's algorithm to carry him.
Fair enough. The landscape has changed.
Right. That specific window of opportunity is gone. And this brings us exactly to Munoz's core thesis. Relying on algorithms like YouTube or TikTok today is a dangerous gamble. You are placing your trust in machines built to benefit tech companies.
Well, they want watch time, obviously.
Exactly. They want maximum watch time to sell ads. They don't care if your highly technical business newsletter gets any traffic. This is why the reverse order tactical truth is so completely necessary.
Okay, let's walk through what that reverse order actually looks like in practice, because if you're listening to this, you might be wondering how to actually execute it.
Right. So you don't start by making content and hoping the algorithm likes you. Let's say you're an expert in team management. You start with your existing network, maybe 1,500 LinkedIn connections.
Okay, a decent starting base.
Yeah. And you filter that list to find 200 people who share a specific commercial interest. Then you spend real time, maybe 15 to 20 minutes a day, manually researching and messaging just 30 highly targeted people.
30 people?
Yes. You look at their profiles, you find out they work at a startup scaling from 10 to 50 people. You send them a direct message asking a very specific question about the friction they are experiencing in that exact phase of growth.
Okay, but let's put ourselves in the shoes of a creator actually trying to do this while holding down a day job. Let's do the math on what you just described. Doing a deeply targeted direct message campaign to just 200 people, researching their profiles, crafting custom messages, following up, that takes hours and hours of pure manual labor.
It takes work, yes.
And that's if you're fast. That is a brutal grind. Lenny admitted in the interview that this path has absolutely no fantasy of a viral moment. You are literally just shouting into the digital void for months. You ask them a specific question, you wait for a reply, you hope they engage.
It's controlled friction.
It is controlled friction, yes, but it has a very hard ceiling. Eventually, you have to transition. You have to take short video clips of your conversations and drop them onto an algorithmic discovery engine like TikTok or YouTube Shorts.
But let's look at the quality of what you're getting for that friction. Controlled friction beats an uncontrolled algorithm every single time. When you send a targeted message asking a specific question like, I notice you're handling product at a company scaling from 10 to 50 people, how are your feedback loops breaking right now? You get real responses.
Sure, from a handful of people.
Real responses from actual humans in your target market are infinitely more valuable to a business than a million empty video views from teenagers scrolling TikTok who will never, ever buy your product.
Oh, come on. Those algorithmic views aren't just empty vanity metrics if you use them right. They act as top-of-funnel discovery. An algorithm isn't just an amplifier, it's a matchmaking engine.
For ads, not for your business.
For attention, it takes the digital fingerprint of those 15 core users you found manually, and it scans millions of accounts to find their exact psychological twins. The YouTube algorithm doesn't care if you've done the unglamorous manual work. It cares if your hook is good. And if the hook is good, it finds people you could never have reached with your 1,500 LinkedIn connections.
But if you just build an audience through broad algorithmic hooks without a specific business plan, you end up with the exact tragedy Lenny admitted he faced early on. You end up what they call viewer rich and cash poor.
Viewer rich and cash poor, right?
Yeah, he had tens of thousands of readers early on, but he had no business model. He didn't know how to make a living off of them. The goal of messaging those 30 people manually on LinkedIn isn't to get podcast listeners. It's to have conversations that verify a willingness to pay.
Which is a huge distinction.
Massive. You must answer the monetization question alongside audience building, not as an afterthought. You ask them, what exact problem are you trying to solve and what budget do you have to solve it? If you build a massive audience first and ask for money later, you are building a house of cards on rented land.
You know, I actually think this is the single most critical revelation of the entire interview. That insight is spot on. You cannot prioritize a content calendar or a product roadmap without having a willingness to pay conversation first.
Exactly.
You absolutely must test that willingness to pay with a small group. But here is the friction point for me. How does a creator move from those 15 positive signals in their LinkedIn inbox to a business that actually pays a mortgage? You can't pay your mortgage with 15 LinkedIn connections, my friend.
By feeding that core group with a consolidation layer. Something like a long-form podcast or an in-depth newsletter.
Right, but we need to explain how that actually works. A consolidation layer, like a weekly podcast, isn't meant to find new people. It acts as a digital anchor. It gives those 15 people a reason to spend 45 minutes a week with you, deepening their trust in your expertise until they are ready to buy your course or your consulting.
Which is the whole point.
But 15 people paying you a small subscription fee does not make a business. You still need distribution. If you don't use algorithmic discovery, your growth relies entirely on those 15 people telling their friends. Word of mouth is powerful, but it is incredibly slow.
It's steady, though.
But to reach true scale, you have to transition from that manual validation phase into an algorithmic growth phase. You validate with the 15, but you scale with the algorithm.
But jumping straight back to the algorithm assumes you have to do all the heavy lifting of scale yourself. And this narrative naturally progresses to Munoz's final and maybe most brilliant challenge, efficiency.
Okay, efficiency how?
Let's say you've done the hard labor. You have your 15 positive signals. You understand their pain points. The old model says you now need to scale by blindly throwing content at an algorithm, hoping to find lookalike audiences. But Munoz points out a massive shortcut. We can use AI search engines like Perplexity or Claude to synthesize existing interviews of this exact demographic.
Walk me through exactly how that works, because that sounds like a massive shift in how we do market research.
Oh, it changes everything. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you know exactly who your target customer is because of your manual outreach, say mid-level product managers at logistics startups, you don't have to spend a year doing original podcast interviews to figure out what the rest of the market is struggling with.
Because they've already been interviewed.
Yes, someone else has already interviewed those exact people online.
So you're basically using AI to crawl what's already out there.
Exactly. You use Claude or Perplexity to pull together the transcripts of the 20 best existing podcasts and articles speaking to that specific persona. And here is the trick. You don't just ask the AI for a simple summary. You prompt it strategically.
Like, what do you ask it?
You ask, what underlying anxiety are these founders expressing across all these interviews that no host is actually offering a solution for? What questions are they dodging? What are the gaps in the market? By doing this, you turn AI from a simple research tool into an empathy engine. We find the market gap instantly without doing the labor others have already done. We scale our intelligence, not just our distribution.
Okay, I will concede that using AI to map the territory like that is a massive Blinkist-level productivity edge. It saves weeks, maybe months, of manual research. You use the AI to find the blind spots in the existing content, and then you build your podcast or newsletter specifically to fill that exact gap.
Right, it's incredibly efficient.
But I have to heavily caution listeners here. AI can hallucinate. It is terrible at original nuance. It completely lacks the empathy and the subtle understanding of tone that you get in a direct human conversation.
Well, it's a starting point, not the finish line.
Exactly. The AI might synthesize 10 articles and confidently tell you the market gap is X, but X might just be a weird artifact of how the language model processed the text. It might not be a real human problem. You still have to take that AI synthesis back to your 15 validated real-world connections.
Of course.
You say, hey, I keep seeing this problem popping up in the industry. Is this something you're actually dealing with? You have to use the humans to confirm the machine's findings.
Absolutely. The AI gives you the map, but the human connections give you the compass. You use the AI to scale your research, but you rely on your own relationships to validate the truth. This is exactly why owning the asset is so critical, and why relying on rented algorithms for discovery is so incredibly dangerous.
Let's clarify what we mean by owning the asset, because Lenny was very clear about this distinction in his interview. He uses Substack as his publishing tool, but he admitted that Substack is just software. If Substack shuts down tomorrow, or if they change their business model, he owns his email list.
He can just leave.
Right. He can export those emails and email his audience directly. The same goes for podcasting. If you host a podcast, you own the XML feed.
Right. And let's explain what that XML feed actually means for the creator.
Right, so when we say you own the XML feed, we mean you hold the actual digital code that delivers your audio to platforms like Apple or Spotify. If Spotify suddenly decides to ban your show, or if they change their algorithm to bury your content, you don't lose your audience. Your listeners can just plug that exact same XML code into any other podcast app and keep listening. You own the direct connection.
Which is the ultimate leverage.
But here is my counterpoint. Owning an asset doesn't mean anyone is actually looking at it. Having a beautifully structured XML feed doesn't matter if nobody knows it exists. I think we're dancing around the brutal truth of modern digital consumption here.
Which is what?
People do not want to read or listen to long-form content anymore unless they absolutely have to. Attention spans are completely fractured. If you just send someone a link to a 5,000-word wall of text or a 2-hour audio file, the vast majority will bounce immediately.
But that is exactly why you don't optimize for random people clicking away. You optimize for the mini tribe that actually cares.
But how do they find it?
If a logistics manager has a massive supply chain problem that is costing their company money, and you have the actionable, verified framework to solve it, they will read the 5,000 words. They will listen to the 2-hour podcast. You don't need millions of casual scrollers. You need the few hundred people whose professional lives depend on your specific knowledge.
Okay, but how do those few hundred people find out you have the solution? Even the most dedicated professional is overwhelmed with information. They aren't actively searching the depths of the internet for your specific newsletter. That's why the algorithmic video clip strategy is non-negotiable for scale.
I just don't think you need it.
You do. You record the deep, highly specific podcast for your core audience, but then you use tools to generate short, punchy clips highlighting the biggest insights. You drop those clips onto YouTube Shorts and TikTok. Why? Not because you want to build deep relationships in a 15-second video, but because those platforms have algorithmic distribution built in.
It's still a gamble.
They act as a massive free net to catch the specific people who look just like your core 15 users. The clips act as a billboard, driving them back to your owned asset, the podcast. The podcast is the asset. The algorithmic platform is just the distribution highway. You simply cannot do this all manually.
But you are still assuming the algorithm works in your favor. And that is a massive, dangerous assumption. An algorithm is a bet on someone else's incentives perfectly aligning with yours, and they rarely do. YouTube wants maximum watch time to sell advertisements.
Sure.
If your highly specific technical clip about conversion funnels doesn't keep a general audience engaged in the first 3 seconds, the algorithm buries it. It stops showing it to anyone. You are constantly one policy change or one code update away from getting deprioritized. With the reverse order manual process, you own the outcome.
Until you run out of hours in the day?
If your direct messages aren't converting, you learn something highly specific about your target market. You adjust your pitch. If it does work, you have built a real defensible business with direct lines of communication that no tech billionaire can take away with a software update.
But the manual process has a hard mathematical ceiling. At some point, there are only so many hours in the day you can spend sending messages. Yes, individual outreach is a bet on something real and tangible. It grounds you in reality. But as Lenny admitted, if he had to start all over today, knowing what he knows now, he would still use platforms like YouTube aggressively.
Well, of course he would say that.
The early Substack advantage was foundational to his success. Without that kind of algorithmic tailwind, you are looking at a process that takes years instead of months to reach a sustainable income.
Taking years instead of months isn't a failure, though. It's just the reality of building a real business. The expectation that a creator should hit escape velocity and make a full-time living in 6 months is a fantasy. And it's a fantasy sold by the very platforms that want your free labor to populate their apps.
That's a bit cynical.
It's the truth. Munoz's deconstruction of Lenny's success story proves this beautifully. True business building is a reverse order process. It relies on the unglamorous manual verification of a mini tribe. You have to prioritize owned relationships. You prioritize AI market synthesis to save time on research and scale your empathy. And you absolutely avoid taking blind algorithmic gambles on rented platforms. You figure out what people will actually pay for, you build the audience around that specific solution, and you bake monetization in from day one. That is the only predictable, defensible path.
I hear your point, and I think we agree on the foundation. The manual work and the willingness to pay verification are absolutely non-negotiable first steps. Munoz was brilliant to pull that out of the conversation and highlight how critical it is. If you don't know how you are going to make money before you start, you are just an influencer waiting to go broke.
Exactly.
However, reaching sustainable, massive scale ultimately requires carefully riding the tailwinds of algorithmic discovery mechanisms. Manual work gives you the right to exist in the market. Algorithms give you the right to scale in that market. Just as Lenny did with his early Substack timing, and just as creators do today with strategic video distribution, you must eventually transition from one-on-one handshakes to algorithmic broadcasts if you want a true, scalable media business.
Lights is the immense value of looking past the glamorous success narratives we constantly see online. When a creator says, "Oh, I just did good work and the audience magically found me," we have to dig deeper. We have to look at the tactical, often highly uncomfortable mechanisms of how an audience is actually built.
Exactly. There is a massive difference between building a vanity audience and building a profitable business. There is so much more to explore in how modern creators can balance that grueling manual relationship building phase with the incredible leverage that modern AI and algorithms provide.
It really leaves us to decide which phase of the process is the true engine of success. Is it the flint that sparks the idea, or is it the lightning that scales it? Thank you for joining us on The Debate. We'll leave you to think about whether you want to build your fire carefully by hand or stand in the field waiting for the storm.